Definitely the best thing about having the show on YouTube is that it's really easy for people to comment on the videos. Sometimes it's just a generic compliment, sometimes it's a neat idea that I hadn't really thought about before, and sometimes it's just file boost crap. So, naturally, we're going to be wrapping up the season with a few of those. But not all at once. Here's a look at some of the notes I received in the last couple of months on Board on the Corner. In Psychotic Hatreds, where I first went on about my personal pet peeves, I mentioned that I strongly despise people who call themselves Christians, yet apparently go out of their way to not follow the gospel at all. Specifically, I talked about the conceited and intolerant views that they often have, getting on a soapbox and saying that their faith is the only right one, that the Bible is true just because it says it's God's word, having an oddly selfish and greedy lifestyle that Jesus himself shunned, and so on. Well, a fellow named Chaos1286 said, "I don't agree. You shouldn't talk about things you don't understand. By this I'm talking about Christianity. You are certainly entitled to your opinion as an atheist." Let me start this response very simply. Chaos, I never once said that I'm an atheist. Pay attention. If you can't even get such a basic detail as that right, you already look like you're yanking my chain. Second, what exactly do I not understand? Everything that I stated about Christianity comes from actually reading verses from the gospel, as well as observations I have made about some of the truly devout. So if you can show me where Jesus said that being peaceful, modest, and humble is wrong, by all means do so. Good luck. And while it wasn't for the smell test episode, I did get a bit of flack elsewhere for criticizing the Gaza invasion a while back. So first of all, let me make one thing clear. Criticizing Israel is not being anti-Semitic. Period. Anyone who says otherwise is either an idiot or a bully. I'll explain it this way. Criticizing Sudan isn't being anti-black. Criticizing North Korea isn't being anti-Asian. Criticizing North America and Europe isn't being anti-Christian. So why in the hell would criticizing Israel be anti-Semitic? Second issue. I don't dispute that Israel has a right to exist and defend itself. However, no one has yet explained to me why it is acceptable for Israel to bulldoze and bomb homes in places that don't belong to it, blow up schools, hospitals, ambulances, and humanitarian missions, and kill 3 or 4 times as many women and children as they kill terrorists. Yet Hamas fires a few badly aimed rockets that have killed about a dozen people and is considered a grave threat to civilization in the Middle East. Please. The third issue. If you're going to argue with me on this, don't bother presenting anything that comes from the Israeli Defense Force, Israeli government, Jewish Defense League, or any other blatantly Zionist group. Why? Because they're never going to be honest about what they're doing. I'm amazed I actually need to explain this to grown adults, but during the war, people always make this stuff called propaganda. It consists of half-truths and bald-faced lies designed to make the author's side look a lot more heroic than it really is. This isn't really that strange of a concept. Whenever one of us is caught doing something wrong, what's the first thing that we do? Make an excuse. Usually a variation of, "He started it!" While we're at it, I also got some comments on my Omar Khadr video from last year, protesting his being beaten and seemingly railroaded on charges that he threw a grenade at a U.S. Army medic in Afghanistan. I say railroaded because the evidence against him is flimsy at best. But because his family is tied to Al-Qaeda, a lot of people seem to think that Omar is already guilty and basically deserves to be fed to the dogs. Well, the last time I checked, under international law, Khadr is entitled to a fair trial, due process, presumed innocence until guilt is proven, and to not be beaten or tortured by his captors. As soon as we throw that away, we're no better than the animals in the Taliban that we're supposedly wanting to stop. Furthermore, when the people condemning him on my YouTube page refer to Afghans as, quote, towel heads and boy fuckers, it's pretty clear what they're really after. Going even further, I can't help but notice that the sort of people who would use a phrase like bleeding heart liberals to describe people who actually have a conscience are invariably sociopaths who act like they don't have hearts in the first place. After all, they never care about helping families leave war zones, never really care about civilians that are killed by white Western armies, nor do they seem to care about homelessness in their own hometowns. So bite me. I'd rather have a bleeding heart than a dead soul. Regarding Prime Minister Harper's chest-thumping over passing the stimulus package, considering that his government has a track record for sneaky, illegal, unconstitutional, and borderline treasonous behavior, it is absolutely zero right to demand that Parliament just rush the package through without any questions asked. That's like giving someone a baseball bat, a way to lock you in a room with him, and then closing your eyes to pretend everything's alright. Regarding the school in New Brunswick that is no longer allowing anyone to sing O Canada, first of all, since making the first video on that, I've been contacted by Canadian citizens by birth who refuse to sing the anthem for moral reasons. Why am I mentioning this? Because naturally, some of the comments I received on that assumed that indignant immigrants are to blame. I'm just pointing out that that's not necessarily true. Anyway, some of the other comments came from people who refuse to even stand respectfully for the anthem. Once again, I ask, why are you here if you have such a low opinion of where you live? When I went after Bell Canada for holding its customers responsible for hacked phone lines, one of the comments I had on the Comedy Network website was to the effect that the customers are to blame for not keeping their lines secure. First of all, one of the developments of that is that the customers who do change their passwords often are still being hacked and billed. In any event, this person conveniently missed my point. Not only is it unconscionable for Bell to bill customers for calls that it knows with absolute certainty that they did not make, but since Bell is directly profiting from a crime wave, then the managers responsible should probably be arrested. That position stands. When I criticized the RCMP for taking forever to admit that its officers are a little trigger-happy with tasers, I got an interesting comment from a gentleman in Ottawa who supposedly works with the Mounties, and took great offense to the fact that I have an opinion on a high-profile issue that is being reported all over the media and the internet. I don't particularly care if this man thinks that newspapers and TV news constantly lie, even if that is really foolish and sweeping. But the fact is, my opinion on Robert Zikansky's death is based on the uncut video that has been on YouTube and several other websites for the last 2 years, viewed by millions of people. The video clearly shows the man was barely armed, not threatening the 4 heavily armed officers at all, and yet was shot repeatedly with the taser without warning. The last time I checked, I have a right to an opinion in this country, especially one that is based on facts that I've actually bothered to research. Finally, I've saved the best for last. My most popular video this season, by far, was my tirade on the controversial show Toddlers and Tiaras. Many of the comments I received agreed that it was exploitive, but a lot of others said that these sandbox beauty pageants are harmless. To be fair, not all pageants are created equal, as WV Pageant Mom was kind enough to point out. In other words, some are more subdued than others. However, to say that parading little girls around in skimpy clothes, having them dance provocatively, sending them to tanning salons, and so on, isn't warping them is pretty naive if you ask me. Then there was pageant sister X14, who took it a step further by saying this: "My little sister does glitch pageants, and they should not be legalized. And guess what? Toddlers and Tiaras may film my sister. My little sister is perfect. You just don't get them because you are ugly and look like a geeks. So suck it and don't watch a show if you don't like it. Who cares about inner beauty? I don't. It doesn't matter the slightest bit. Neither does school, spelling, or grammar. Only people who are ugly care about the stuff like that. An example is you." I think I know the perfect response to this. Brian, if you will.
You know, Connie, I think I have a theory about why you're such a bitch.
Excuse me?
You see, Connie, you're popular because you developed early and started putting out when you were 12, but now you can't stand to look at yourself in the mirror because all you see is a whore. So you pick on Meg to avoid the inevitable realization that once your body's used up by age 19, you're going to be a worn-out, chalky-skinned burlap sack that even your stepdad won't want. How's that? Am I in the ballpark?
Okay, one last thing that I've explained for a few weeks. Some people have noticed that I've started using a different sign-off. That's it for me, rather than enough said. That's because some other people have suggested that I was trying to shut out feedback, even though that wasn't really what I was trying to do. I hope that's obvious. Since then, some people have said that they actually missed the old one. So, between now and April, how about all of you out there tell me which one you prefer? Whichever one wins out, I'll start using. So, I'll see you in Season 4. See you then.